So it's part 5 of this Kontakt series, and I wanted to spice things up a little bit. So to cover the subject of multi-sampling, what I've got is the Moog minitaur. Also, I've got this running through into the propeller head balance interface. So we're going to record some sounds from the minitaur into the interface and then bring those through inside Kontakt so that we can create a multi-sampled synthesizer. So despite the fact that it's called a sampler, Kontakt doesn't actually record sound in. You need to have the AV files or the WAV files on your hard disk already. So in order to get the sound from the minitaur onto my hard disk, I'm going to be using Logic Pro 10. And we're going to set this up with an external MIDI. And this is going to be using the external instrument plugin. This is going to combine the MIDI and the audio together on one track. I need to check my input here. Now the balance interface has got a line 1 and a line 2. Each has 2 inputs. I want to go for the first input because the minitaur is a mono output, and that's going to go into that first input, so that's connected already. I need to make sure this matches up, so it's going to input 1. Just a little double check on the output here, that's the right MIDI device, and then also the output here in terms of the signal into the stereo out 1 and 2. I'm going to create the track, and now what I've got is combined MIDI and audio from an external device on the same track, which is great. So we're set up. Now what I need to do is to start customizing things a little bit. I want the minitaur patch to be just literally a sawtooth on this example. At the moment that's a pulse wave. I'm just going to switch that. The other thing that I want to do is just to get a vanilla patch, you know, an initialized sound. So I'm going to open up the filter, take the resonance down, take the filter envelope amount down, make sure I've got none of these modulation knobs active. The volume here, that's probably about right. I want to make sure it's not clipping on the way in. Now the volume envelope down here, definitely maximum sustain. Decay just to max. Because this is actually the maximum volume here, this isn't actually being used, but the attack I want fast. Slowing, faster, there we go. So that's giving me the raw sound that I want to bring through. Now, multi-sampling, the concept is that we record a variety of different sounds from the keyboard, from the original device, and we make a note of which keys we're recording, and then we place those sounds on the keyboard on Kontakt. And then what we can do is we can actually span the zones to fill in the gaps. Now, in an ideal world, we take a sample of every single key, but A, that's going to take a long time to map out, and B, it's going to take up more space on the hard disk. Maybe the octaves is a good starting point on this example. You can go to more detail, but it's just going to slow the video down. So what I want to do is take the octave down, then I'll do another C, another C. I'd record these into Logic, so that's what I'm going to do next, okay? So I've got the MIDI notes programmed in to trigger the minitaur from C0 to C4 octave spans, and I'm just going to section these off so you can see here that I've got the first note ready to go. We're going to bounce this out, and when we're bouncing we have to do this in real time because it's hardware. Just going to send this out as C0 minitaur. Let's go to the next one. Going to bring this over. This is going to be C1. These are the samples that we're going to bring through into Kontakt fairly soon. So let's just run through this. Shouldn't take too long. You could, of course, bounce the whole lot in one go, but I'm just trying to make this nicer and clear for you guys if you're new to Kontakt. So that's all the notes recorded as audio files. We can now go into Kontakt and start working with these. So we're back in Kontakt in standalone mode. You can see my samples that I've bounced out here on the left hand side in the file browser. And what I'm going to do that's different to before, instead of double clicking here to create the instrument, I'm going to set up an empty instrument. I'm going to name this, so I'm going to call it Minitaur Sawtooth. And I'm going to open up the instrument. So we're going to set the wave editor outside, mapping editor inside, and I'm going to drag the sample from the browser onto the mapping editor. So watch what happens as I drag. The vertical position affects the span of the zone. So if I come down to the bottom, it's going onto a single key. If I move up, it will edge wider until it gets to the octave point. Now I can move left and right, keeping that octave span, which is really, really useful. If I take it to the very top, it goes across the whole keyboard. So I want an actual complete zone spread over. So I want a complete octave per zone. Now, this is great, of course, but we can actually do that a bit more quickly. I'm going to select it and push backspace to get rid of that. On the file browser, we select everything. So Shift plus click between the first and the last. That collects everything in between. And I'm going to drag over here. Can you see we've got those separate samples mapped onto these octaves? So there we go. If I let go, everything is there where it should be. So I can use the keyboard. Now, despite sounding good, we can actually get this working a lot better. And the other thing to consider is if I held my key down, it's going to get to the point where there's no more sound in the sample. I'll bring this one to the foreground. So there we go. So literally you can see the beginning to the end of the sample. And I want to be able to hold down the key for as long as I want. So I need to get a loop on the go. So let's go through the procedures now. We need to do this with every one of these. And what I'm going to do is take this down, C0. There we go. So you can hear that we need to be a little bit tighter on the front. I can zoom in here, and what I'm going to do is come up. This is a procedure. Set the snap loop to 0 crossing. And that's going to make it easier for us when we set up the loops. But first, let's set up a manual start point. So that's good. I just want to adjust the volume envelope here. Let me just reduce this. It's a lot tighter now. Right, back up again. So that's a great starting point, but what I want to do is get a loop. Now, because we've got here the snap to 0 crossing, it means that when I push Control and drag, it's snapping to the 0 crossing points. You can clearly see this at the beginning and the end. I'm going to zoom in a bit more. Now, that could be a good loop point. In fact, it's probably going to sound great. But what I'm probably going to do is take it so it does the actual cycle from the top to the bottom here. Let's have a listen. There we go. So I can hold that down as long as I want. Let's take a look at the next one. So this is the next octave up. And you can do this so it selects the zones via MIDI. If I push this, look, we go back to the first one. Now to this one we're going to work on. So that's cool now. So we got ourselves a Minitaur there, the Sawtooth, and this is in a real basic shape. And you know, this is meaning that we can actually get in and play around with it, add the filtering, modulation stuff that you saw on the previous video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this available for you to download. I'll put the download link in the info text description underneath the video. Download it, watch part 4 again, add some filtering and modulation and see what you can come up with. I will do a follow-up video for this where I do some sound design as well, so watch out for that too.